community on where we're going and what infrastructure we need to have in place with our target year of 2050. So it's very important in terms of all the participants in the community and the stakeholders, and we really appreciate you being involved in this conversation today. The goal of the meeting is really to focus on how transportation can support economic development, or conversely, how economic development needs transportation and the value that transportation improvements provide to our economy. It's my personal belief that economic development and transportation have to be linked up and grow together, and that without one, you can't have the other. In other words, if we have an inadequate transportation system, surely it limits our ability to grow economically. And also, in order to meet our demands for economic growth, we have to have the proper infrastructure in place. So this is a very important plan that we do every 4 to 5 years. I'll see if I get a head nod on that one. I think it's 5-year increments. But it is a substantial effort, and this is an important point in time in terms of planning for where we're going as a community. So the purpose of the meeting is really an opportunity for each of you to discuss your needs and challenges, insights, and any information you think we need to capture as we move forward in this plan. So with that, I will let Amy get into the introduction of our guests and also other information she might want to share. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm Amy Cummings, also with RTC, and did want to let everyone know we're going to be recording our session today. It's not being broadcast live, but we are recording it for our records, and would like to post it on our website afterwards. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And as Bill put so very well, this is helping us develop our regional transportation plan. And this is a plan that we are required to do and update, but it has a lot of benefits for us as a region to establish all of the transportation priorities that we have moving forward over the short and long term, up to 2050 in this case. And of course, community input from all of our stakeholders and members of the public is a critical piece of this. So we're excited to be underway, and we hope to be finished by the end of this calendar year with this plan. I wanted to highlight our guiding principles, safe and healthy communities, but in particular, economic vitality and innovation. As Bill was just discussing, transportation plays a critical role in supporting our economic development. And of course, now in the crisis that we're currently in, this just takes a new urgency. And that's why we're so thrilled to have the amazing panel that we do today to talk about all the full spectrum of economic issues and recovery for our community. And transportation does have a lot of impacts. Obviously, you know, one is creating a lot of construction jobs. We certainly do that with our very robust roadway and transit construction program. But the mobility benefits that we provide with these projects also let people have expanded mobility and access to the goods and services in our community. And it improves quality of life. And that makes us a more attractive region for people who live here and may want to come here. Plus, we always want to pay attention to those regional connections, both within Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, but also to our surrounding counties. The types of projects that we do are transportation safety, roadway capacity and operations, transit service, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And I don't want to take up too much of your time today because I know everyone wants to hear from our expert panel. So I am just so thrilled today that we have Mike Kazmierski of EDON, Ann Silver of the Chamber, and Jennifer Cunningham of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. And we're going to start with Mike. So I'm going to take my screen off of share, and Mike has some of his own information he's going to make available.
Can you see that? Okay. Are we ready? Can you hear that? Okay. Let me just start by saying economic development and transportation are linked, as Bill mentioned at the beginning. A strong partnership with EDON and the RTC has allowed this community to grow in a very positive way. And I want to thank the RTC staff for all their support in everything that we've done. Glad to give you our insights on what it's going to take to continue this community's growth in a sustainable and positive way. As you mentioned, the 2015 Regional Transportation Plan, long-range transportation investments are something that's very important to the success of this community from an economic development perspective. This is probably no surprise to anyone, but Nevada is the fastest growing state in the nation, continues to be since the recession. In the last couple of years, we've been very successful at attracting great companies, which has spurred on growth in the state. In Washoe County alone, we project continued growth, significant growth actually, faster than we have grown in the past. You can see the recession and what that did from a jobs perspective, and we're back on track now, seeing continued growth out to 2030. Just in the last 5 years, our employment growth has been in these sectors, and if you notice, manufacturing is one of the targets we've laid out as a region, and our growth in that sector is huge because as we're experiencing a somewhat recession nationally, we're not feeling it nearly as much as our neighbor to the south. Unemployment numbers just came out today showing Vegas and the Vegas area at 33% unemployment. We're below 20%. So what you're seeing is sustainability and resilience in the kinds of companies that we've been able to bring to the region, certainly on technology and logistics, distribution, manufacturing, all of which have weathered this latest COVID-19 storm quite well. You see the little dip there in our actual job growth, clearly an impact from the virus, but we expect to bounce back and continue to grow at what is close to a 10,000 jobs per year rate. That is a big number for the region, but we've managed to maintain that growth over the last 6 years, and we certainly see that growth continuing going forward. The reason we believe the growth is going to happen is even now, 3 months into this recession and this virus, we have nearly more than 1,600 jobs teed up to announce in the next 6 months. And you notice the manufacturing, logistics, distribution, technology, areas that are very resilient to economic pullbacks. And our hot prospect list, we're actually working with 150 companies right now. These are companies that as soon as they can come here and visit, they will. We expect this continued growth. What's interesting is if you notice the relocation state, a lot of people say they're all coming from California. Well, many are, but you can see we have quite an attractiveness to companies outside of California, and that provides even further diversity as we go forward. The headquarters are very important to us because that brings in a different kind of structure, a lot more visitor and client traffic and corporate travel that comes with it. So from a future growth perspective, we see advanced manufacturing and industrial land growth, which tends to be outside the region, more infill and transit for our technology growth. E-commerce and logistics require industrial land. In the industrial center, Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, there's a lot of growth planned for Google, blockchain, Switch, and Tesla, and many other companies. Most of those companies are very, very early in the stage of their growth. And then housing. By the way, housing has a pretty good demand on transportation as well. We're pushing for infill, but because of our affordability, there's a certain amount of drive to afford mindset when it comes to housing, which will put further demand on the transportation infrastructure. If you look at the industrial growth we project in the next 20 years, we're looking at over 140,000 acres. The city of Reno city limits is only 67,000. So that just gives you some perspective of the size of the industrial growth we project over the next 20 years. And the North Valley's piece includes Stead. Washoe County Landfill actually is 90,000 acres, of which only 20,000 is likely to be dedicated to industrial. The Tahoe Reno Industrial Center is 105,000 acres, of which 70,000 or so is blockchains and other areas that are yet to be developed. Probably half of that is land that would take some engineering to use. In Fernley, Mark IV and other projects out in the Fernley area, 24,000, and Silver Springs, 25,000. You see where those larger projects and that available land is really pretty far away from the metro area, which means you still have to start looking at transportation corridors in order to fill not only the needs from a industrial perspective, but then a housing perspective. Much of the housing, over 40,000 approved or under construction lots right now. You can see where they are. They tend to be on the outskirts of the region. North Sparks, North Valleys, Fernley, Dayton Corridor, and then obviously downtown Reno and South Reno. So if you put all that together and you start talking about growth going forward, we see these as the five most significant hotspots when it comes to transportation and transportation infrastructure. Obviously, I-80 corridor to Fernley. We used to say that the industrial center, but actually to Fernley now with the growth we see out there and the potential future growth, especially when it comes to affordable housing. The 395 to Stead, North Valleys, an area that as North Valleys continues to grow, we'll see more and more congestion. A route from North Valleys to the industrial center to bypass the Spaghetti Bowl and I-80 corridor, very important for future growth, likely to be something that's included as part of the lands bill going forward. The Pyramid Highway to McCarran and Spanish Springs, from McCarran to Spanish Springs. Anyone who's gone to Spanish Springs during rush hour, which we haven't had much of lately, knows that is becoming terribly congested. What was a 10-minute, 15-minute trip before is now 30 to 45 minutes. And then finally, the Spaghetti Bowl, which there are plans in place and there's already efforts to move forward to fix that. Obviously, construction is ongoing. That's probably a 5-year project. So if we were, had a big pot of money, those are the 5 areas we would hit hard in trying to upgrade. And certainly the RTC is aware of all of them. One final comment on the road to Fernley. It is becoming fairly unsafe and it hasn't been as much a project, obviously, but when you talk about the industrial center, going from 13,000 employees now to double or triple when you start looking at what's going on in Fernley, and then obviously all the truck traffic that goes on that corridor, that is a pretty dangerous stretch of road right now. A week doesn't go by where there are not 2 or 3 fairly significant accidents that shut it down totally. Clearly an issue when you start looking at employees that go to the industrial center. The count from Tesla is 75% of their employees live north of I-80. So it's really North Sparks and North Reno, which is the most affordable place to buy a home now, and that will continue to be the case, so we see continued growth there. With all that said and done, we have concerns, some more important than others. Water's not a big issue, housing is. Flood control is on and off again. We are addressing that as a region. Education funding is a concern of ours. Government funding through this crisis is going to be an issue. How does that ripple down to transportation, our downtown revitalization, and both downtowns are included there. And then finally, transportation infrastructure continues to be an issue. So that's really all I have is a summary and from an economic development perspective, what the needs are from a transportation view. Any questions? Okay, Amy, it's all yours, or Daniel.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that information. It's great to get the larger regional perspective beyond our boundaries here in Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County. So thank you for helping share that big picture viewpoint of some of the issues that we're facing. And the good news is we do have some near-term improvements planned on Pyramid Highway. We're working with NDOT right now on the design to widen that to 6 lanes up to Los Altos from McCarran. So that will be a big help. And that one's in the 2 to 3 year time frame for construction. Spaghetti Bowl, thankfully, NDOT definitely has that on their agenda, and 395 North. So that's in the 5-year window. Again, we would like these projects to all be done sooner than they can be, but those certainly are in the works.
Great.
Great. Well, next, I'm very happy to have Ann Silver, who's going to speak with us about her perspective on economic development and vitality from the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you, Bill, for inviting me. I'm honored to be with my colleagues for this discussion. You know, Mike gave a very big picture view, and I am thrilled that he looks at it through a big picture lens. From my lens, relative to 2,000 chamber members, I look at it through a local lens, and I look to a road and transportation system that serves both small businesses, large businesses, and consumers. I think, Amy, you mentioned quality of life as an important factor in your planning, and certainly quality of life is something we all value. And whether we're talking about growth or no growth or more growth, we're always referencing back to the incredible and unique quality of life we have here in Washoe County. I think transportation plays such a huge role in that, because people want to get around easily. They want to be able to move from South Reno to North Reno, up to the university, over to Sparks, over to Trick easily. We don't want to be jammed up like we imagine it is or see that it is in California. I'm from New York City, where I spent most of my life on a small island with 8 million people, where I got accustomed to subways and never owned a car. And here, where we are very car friendly, we see hundreds and hundreds of cars on the Spaghetti Bowl, and as Mike has referred to, several accidents on the way out to Trick. I think people value the fact that we are not over our skis in terms of what we can plan for in transportation. We know we want ease of commuting. We don't want hour-and-a-half commutes. We don't plan for a subway system, but we know we need reliable transportation. We need bus routes that accommodate employees getting to their jobs, consumers who may not own a car or not have a reliable vehicle, who want to go shopping. We know we have an elderly population that relies on public transportation. So I look at things from the lens of business activity and how easy it is and how easy it should be, given the quality of life we all feel privileged to have here, how easy it is to get from place to place. And I would hope that in your agenda and in your planning, you're looking at more and frequent bus routes, maybe to routes, maybe routing to places that heretofore have not had bus service, looking at accommodations for the elderly, people who may not easily board a bus. Certainly there is a younger population that is less car reliant and may want to do more walking and may want to do more mass transportation. Also, we're looking at clean, renewable energy. That's something the Chamber is very much supportive of. And so we want to see more electric vehicles. I'm not pushing a particular brand, but I think having more charging stations would be helpful. We're looking at getting one outside the Chamber of Commerce office. I think we're looking at also some innovation that will result from COVID-19. There's very little positive to say about this pandemic, almost nothing, except that it has been a couple of months to see cleaner air and less traffic. And we've all appreciated that. And I've heard hundreds of comments about that. And maybe there's a way to maintain our growth and the diversity of businesses that Mike always refers to, and the innovation of technology and what we see developing even out of this pandemic, and focusing on a business-friendly, transportation-friendly community where people don't hesitate to get in their car or get on a bus or get on a bike or walk, so that their quality of life can be maintained. They can socialize, they can do their shopping, grocery shopping, visiting, going to a restaurant, whatever it may be, and not dread a long commute. So I think ultimately the Chamber's goal is to work collaboratively with you. By the way, congratulations on the Midtown area. We watched that construction going on for months. My computer was shaking every day as they were drilling the streets, but it's just a marvel to look at and realize that the connectivity between UNR and Plum is just beautiful. We'll have trees and benches, and people can ride bikes and walk on wider sidewalks, but all that is a part of the quality of life. So in your planning, the Chamber hopes that we take all businesses into account, including those we haven't even thought of yet that Mike is attracting to this community. And we think about transportation for both employees and consumers. That's my biggest focus. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anne. Are there any questions from the group? And we do anticipate having time for questions at the end, but wanted to give just a couple minutes if there's one right now. All right, I don't hear any. So Jennifer Cunningham, thank you for being here and talking about the convention and visitors' perspective on our economic growth. And we have very exciting news coming up June 4th with some things starting to reopen a little bit more. So look forward to hearing from you on your views on economic revitalization.
Thank you, Amy. Absolutely. First, I'd like to give everyone kind of a status of what's going on at the RSCBA. And as you all know, the travel industry has been the hardest hit industry during this COVID, from the economic effects of COVID. Just to give you a perspective on a national level, I just saw a stat that the hotel industry alone expects to lose over $740 billion in business in lost sales over the next 12 months. And you're right, Amy, we're anxiously awaiting June 4th. Of course, our hotel casinos having been closed down, our budget was hit to the tune of 90% less than we were forecasting because we're not bringing the people into town. Staff has been working very hard in keeping a point of connectivity with all of our visitors and our loyal customers. And we'll be moving that point of connectivity into a little bit different messaging once the casinos are open and we can invite everyone back. And it'll be delicate for us because we have to balance the safeness and healthy, the health and safety that our visitors may be concerned with what we're trying to do, which is our mission is to bring as many people to town and fill hotel rooms. So that's going to be a delicate balance initially. I think very similar to Edon and the Chamber, success in our endeavors will stimulate the economic revitalization to our community. So with that being said, we're keeping a very careful watch on travel sentiment research in order to craft our messaging and provide us with a compass of where we should be spending our advertising dollars. And what we're seeing is that many people are still planning on taking their vacations, which is really great news. Many more so will be doing it as a road trip in their cars. And the research is indicating that the perception of a drive-up market, viable drive-up market, will be closer to 700 miles. In the past, it's been a couple hundred miles. People will jump in their car for a few hours to go to a destination and not fly. Well, now they're looking at a 700-mile radius. And because of that, it's super important that our interregional roadways and highway systems are as efficient and comprehensive as possible to get the visitors here to Reno Tahoe in a very easy, accessible way. I think it's really important to provide, in looking to the future, our conventions that we bid on, they really want that connectivity from the university to Midtown to the convention center. And that comes up all the time as a desire of groups that are meeting here, whether they're staying near the convention center and they want to look at the university or go to Midtown if they don't have their cars with them. And anytime that we're talking about a citywide convention, keep in mind that in the downtown corridor, there's 4,000 hotel rooms. So it's very important that we have the ability to move people from downtown corridor all the way to the convention center. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. And that's our needs as it relates to moving visitors and tourists into the destination, but easily around once they are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that update, and we're all hoping that people are willing to travel and we are able to fill up more of those hotel rooms in the very near future.
Mm-hmm.
Now we wanted to open up the floor for some more discussion, or if you would like to put a question or a comment in the chat box, that is available to you as well. While folks might be thinking of a question, I had a couple just to get us started. One is, what transportation issues do you hear about from your clients or the businesses that you work with? And we just heard one about connecting UNR to Midtown to the convention center. So that's one absolutely we made a note of. Are there others?
Yeah, Amy, I think on the big map, it kind of laid out where we were getting pushback from customers and clients, especially North Sparks, where we have a business park, a fairly small one. The time it takes to get from the North Sparks area down into the main metro area. Sounds like you're working on that. I think it'd probably be helpful to maybe put out a press release or something with those timelines that I could forward on to clients. That would be helpful. I do think the North Valley's piece is growing at an incredible rate, and as the STED project moves forward and several others, we see a lot of growth there, not just from industrial, but from housing as well. So those are probably two areas that are, getting a lot. We're getting a lot of feedback on that I don't have, and maybe we haven't necessarily pushed out your information aggressively enough. But I think that would be helpful to tell people what's going on.
Thank you. And I see we have one comment, but now I can't get to it. Dan, are you able to see the comment from Colin?
Sure. So the question was, can you all address any elements of an active transportation plan as a component of the long-range planning, particularly as it relates to outdoor recreation opportunities for residents and visitors? That was from Colin Robertson.
I'll
Thanks, Colin.
jump in on that one if you'd like. Hello, Colin. How are you? It's very important for our visitor base, and I know that for visitors up at Incline Village, going to Sand Harbor with the transportation being provided, that has been really helpful. Transportation to the ski resorts, visitors are always looking for that, and elements of an active transportation plan. I don't know how to answer that exactly, Colin, But what I want to say is it's very helpful to get the visitors to these activities and for the businesses to have the visitors come in a very easy way where they don't have to struggle to find out the information on how to get from point A to point B and just jump on a bus or some public transportation. I think Ann's base benefits from the base of tourists that we bring in. So it's super important. Yes, good question.
Yeah, if I might comment, Colin, I think that's a great question. And from our perspective, I think we look at more transportation into downtown and midtown and South Reno from the airport, not just a bus that takes you up to Tahoe, but something you can get on and see the town, as it were, or stop and get back on. I think that's important for our local businesses. I also think biking and walking are incredibly important, and I think we could do more in the way of signage and opportunities for visitors, tourists, even residents to better understand how quickly they can get somewhere by bike or walking. It may be just a few blocks away. That's good for health. It's good for mental health. It's good for our quality of life. See more people out and about. In the past, I've looked down streets here and I don't see any walkers. I miss that about a big city where you walk to many locations. So I think maps, guideposts, signage, and ways for people to get around town. I think that includes adding more bus routes, particularly to those areas Mike Kazmersky referred to. When you're talking about Spanish Springs, you're talking about South Reno, we need to be able to bring people into town and get them back home, whether they're employees or they're consumers, and do so by not adding more cars to the road, but by having more transportation opportunities for them to take advantage of.
One other comment on the outdoor recreation piece. We do have a regional trails plan that's moving forward quite aggressively, and we should have results of that probably this year. The current crisis has put it on hold, but we do see a regional trails plan that will connect, maintain, and upgrade a lot of our trails and connect them to many of the bike paths and other things that the RTC is working on.
And I would add that RTC has a bicycle map. So that is available. It lets you see where all of the bike lanes are, as well as shared use paths and off-street facilities. And I would encourage folks to go look at us and download our Smart Trips app. And that will let you find all of the transit systems. So if you want to get from here up to Lake Tahoe, it lets you find all of those mobility options in one app. So go to rtcwashoe.com and find the details on that app.
Great.
Thanks.
Amy, this is Ken Crater. I have a couple of questions, comments.
Hey, Ken.
So first of all, and this kind of goes to what Colin was just asking about, but I'm involved in a US 395 coalition to widen US 395 from the Hallelujah Junction or the Feather River Highway up into Susanville. And that is becoming a route that's more and more demand, not just for recreation, but for trucks, because it's a 2-hour shorter drive from Reno into southern central Oregon and Portland up 395 than it is I-80 to I-5. So I think that just speaks to the opportunity to also work with our nearby partnering communities on projects like that. But one of the reasons I bring that up is that section of roadway has a huge fatal accident rate. It's almost creepy scary how many people have died on that section of highway. And I think in terms of Interstate 80 out to Tahoe Reno Industrial Center and Fernley, and if you look at how the accidents are increasing out on that route, in my mind, that also highlights the importance of getting that route improved before we start approaching the accident rates that we have on that section of US 395. So it's not just the capacity issue, and Mike mentioned that, it's also the crashes and the fatals that we have in those different sections. So that's one point I wanted to make. And then second, I believe that the revitalization of downtown Reno largely plays into the whole transportation issue. And that is because if we can make that not just downtown where you typically think of, Virginia and Second and the surrounding area, but all the urban areas that are within a walkable bicycle distance into the downtown area. If we can really do everything we can to accelerate residential growth in that area, and I believe that is an area where a lot of the employees moving to this region would like to live, but that has a huge positive impact on transportation because there's fewer trips that originate from the downtown area, and the vehicle miles traveled are far less than some of the suburban areas, say out in Spanish Springs. And if you think about a typical ITE trip generation rate of 10, it's probably more like 7 or 8 in our general, metro area, but maybe that's only 2 or 3 in the downtown area. So I think the more we can do to continue to revitalize our downtown Reno, to deal with the issues of homelessness and blight, and to encourage more high density multifamily, that could have a huge, huge positive impact in terms of reducing traffic and overall vehicle miles traveled within our region and creating very desirable places for people to live.
You can. And I see John Flansburgh is on the line, so he certainly is well aware of this. We're working closely with City of Reno staff to do probably a forum similar to this one later in the summer, focused on downtown Reno. And our definition of downtown is going to be from Keystone over to Wells. And we're going to be looking at exactly the type of things that you're talking about. What can we do to support more people wanting to live downtown and be downtown and recreate downtown? So we'll make sure you're aware of those discussions here in another month or two down the road to get your additional input.
Amy, if there's no other comments for Ken, that we do have one more comment in the chat box. If you'd like me to read that, it's from Andy. He said, is it possible to have a combined effort among the Chamber, RSCBA, EDON, and other industry organizations to lobby or push for the lands bill?
I'll start first by saying we're working closely with Scott Bensing and the county, as well as the congressional delegation. We've met on several occasions. That is a very important project for the region. The EDON board has come out in support of it. We've been very involved with it. And I think it's probably, when you talk about the long-term needs of the community, the lands bill is a very important component to that. So we are strongly supportive. I think most of our board members have engaged at some level, and I would think from a business perspective, our elected leadership is aware that we think this is important.
I can comment that the Chamber Board has looked at the bill and understands its components. We want to collaborate with Mike and Jennifer and every organization that understands that we need to take more property and make more property available for expansion and diversification of our economy. And with that, the transportation needs that will accompany that kind of growth. If it adds to our business community, that's great too. We want to see that continue its diversification and its success as we rebound through COVID-19. And so I think we'll all find ourselves collaborating to support that bill.
And I will just say, I agree. And we collaborate on a lot of things, and we have throughout the years. Frequently, the airport is part of the group that we have as well. Yeah, and our boards as well.
Thank you. Dan, are there any other comments in the chat box?
That's all I see currently.
Any other questions for our panel today? Well, then I will close with letting everyone know, if you want to be involved in developing the regional transportation plan, we appreciate your comments today. But go to rtcwashoe.com and follow us on social media so that you're going to receive continued updates on where we are and other events that you can participate in. Again, we appreciate everybody's thoughts today, especially Jennifer Cunningham, Ann Silver, and Mike Kazmierski for sharing your expertise with all of us.
Thank you,
Thank
Amy.
you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.